Somebody just told me that they're terrified of dying, and there are actually things that can help with this. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. So this is one of the core purposes of spiritual beliefs. So let's talk about the afterlife. First off, there's nothing universal. When it comes to the afterlife, there's no universal belief amongst all of religion or anything like that. However, most religions believe in some sort of permanence to the soul or the spirit or existence or consciousness or however they label it. For some, it's reincarnation, which Christians actually can't completely reject because, hello, the resurrection, but, whatever. And then there's those of us for whom Christian is maybe the closest word to describe what we believe, where the Bible is maybe your primary or most familiar sacred text. Well, let's dig into it. So back in the time of Jesus, like when Jesus was around, there was a raging debate about the permanence of the soul and about the afterlife. There were some people who believed at that time that nothing existed, that you died and it was sort of annihilationism, right? You died and that was it. You were done. Life was over. But when you read Jesus does not side with those people. If there's one thing that it feels like Jesus is clear on, it's that there is some sort of afterlife, some sort of permanence to existence. Like I said before, the majority view of world religions that there is something permanent that continues on. But let's just be clear, Jesus's teachings on the subject are all over the place. Like, he uses all kinds of different references and metaphors. Like one of his teachings uses the Greek story of Hades, right? That it actually uses the word Hades, and it talks about an afterlife that has multiple different expressions for different people. Like, it's exactly what you learned in high school about the Greek afterlife. And then he also uses this term, eternal life, right? So, there's that classic verse of John 3:16, for God so loved the world that God gave his only son, that whoever believes in God's son will inherit eternal life. That's one of the places that most people know. But what's really important, is to read that verse in context, because the next verse, it says that God didn't send Jesus into the world to condemn the world, but to give them eternal life. So that's really important for people who want to, in my comments probably on this video, condemn people and judge people and say they're going to hell and all of that. That verse is really clear. God did not send Jesus to condemn people. That was not the goal of Jesus. The goal of Jesus was eternal life for everybody. But that word eternal life is really interesting. Another place that's sort of related to the eternal life term is John 10:10, where it says that Jesus came that we might have life and have it to the full. That's a really important verse as well for understanding this word eternal life. So in Greek, there are actually a couple of words that in English are generally just translated as the word life. One of them is the word bios, and that's living and not dying, right? What happens when you are breathing and then when you are not breathing, right? It's that part of our English definition for the word life. But then there's this other word called zoe, and zoe is sort of the quality of life. It is the idea of having a really good life. And the good life is the life that we want, a life of connection, a life of rewarding work, a life of relative comfort and prosperity and success and all of those kind of things. That's the sort of essence of the word zoe. And that's the word that's used in both that John 3:16, that Jesus came to give us zoe, And it's sort of being captured. The essence of it is being captured in that John 10:10 passage where it says that Jesus came to give us life and life to the full. That like life to the full. That's the Zoe-ness of that, not just alive and not dead, but like this quality of a life. And the idea of eternal life, right, is like that life going beyond here and going into eternity in some sort of existence that happens and continues forth even after we die. I think it's the concept that people are trying to think of when they use the word heaven, and people will say that they'll quote like from Revelation 21 and say, oh, it has streets of gold, or in John 14 that it has mansions, which John 14 is a really interesting passage that has nothing to do with mansions in the afterlife, but whatever. All of those terms, all of those passages are deeply metaphorical and ultimately are displaying the inadequacy of human language to express what is beyond our existence, right? It's just trying to use finite language to express boundless goodness, right? The good life, the thing that you want and desire. Then the question is there punishment? And when you look at the Bible from the beginning to the end, and you look at the way the cultures understood the afterlife and all of that kind of stuff, it's inconclusive. Because there was times when there was this idea of annihilation. There was times where it was this idea of like, well, everybody goes and experiences this same afterlife, and it's kind of slightly different for different people. And then there was this time where they were being persecuted, and the question was like, okay, what about all this evil that's going on? And these people seem to, in this life, just prosper from it. Shouldn't they experience some consequence? And so some people thought that consequence was going to be in the afterlife. And then if you continue on past the Bible into like Christian church history, for a long time there was this idea that people would continue to be able to choose to follow God even after they died. That was a really common belief. And so that it's inconclusive. So maybe, but when you look at it on the whole, there's a lot more about blessing and goodness and a good life and a good afterlife and all of that than these handful of verses on punishment. I'll do a whole video about that. When it comes to the afterlife, though, I think it really comes down to what this one rabbi responded. He was asked, what do Jews believe about the afterlife? And he thought about it for a second, and he said, I think what we believe is that if God wanted us to spend a lot of time thinking about it, God would have told us a whole lot more about it. And so we need to spend most of our time working on making this life and this earth a better place, and we'll figure out the afterlife when we get there.